Okay, welcome to the next video for week 1 of our Brain and Special Senses lab. I'm going to start this one by briefly covering the structures of a neuron. This should be a review, so it should be easy enough to remember. A neuron is made up of 3 main parts: dendrites, which are finger-like projections that come off of the soma, or the neurosoma, or the body of the nerve cell, and inside the neuron, or the neurosoma, you find the nucleus. Coming off of the soma is the axon, which helps to propagate the nerve signals. Okay? That's just a very quick review because we've seen this many times now. Let's talk about the spinal cord. And when we look at the spinal cord, the first thing I want you to look at is the way in which the spinal cord is organized. The outer portion of it, or the cortex, is made up of white matter. And this is this tan staining. In some models, this will be white, and that is because this is called white matter. And in a living spinal cord, it would be white. When you dye it to look at a specimen, it turns tan. And this white matter mainly consists of myelinated axons of neurons, and that's why it's white. The inside, or the medulla, or the center, we find the gray matter, and in this case the dye turns it a dark brown color, but in some models you will see that it looks gray. And we find here this gray matter is made up of unmyelinated somas of nerves, or the neurosomas, and so that's why it's not white. It doesn't have the myelin. The next thing I want you to look at are the spinal nerves, and notice that they both sort of have a fork in the road, or they separate. And if you look at these on either side, both the, I'll tell you right now, this is the right side and this is the left side, you see a swelling. And this root, that's what we call these, roots, with the swellings are the dorsal roots. And the swelling is a ganglion. And so we know that this is the dorsal root ganglion of the dorsal root of the spinal nerve on both sides. Since it has a left and a right, and you know that this now is the posterior root, we can know that this must be the right side and this must be the left side. Here in front of that, we also have the anterior root, also known as the ventral root. And both the right and the left side have ventral roots. If you were to go back to the dorsal root ganglion, or the posterior root, and we looked inside, we would find neurons. And in fact, we would find afferent neurons, bringing sensory information into the central nervous system. In the anterior roots, we have efferent neurons, or the motor neurons, bringing out motor information. Now let's go back into the spinal cord itself and dig in a little bit more. Remember that the cortex is white matter. But if we look, we can further divide them into what are called columns or funiculi, or funiculus as a single. So I usually say the word funiculus, but it's also the word column, sometimes you'll see. So this area right here is the right posterior funiculus. The right posterior funiculus. So this has to be the top. This has to be the left posterior funiculus. The outsides, you find the lateral funiculi, both right and left. And in the fronts, we have the anterior funiculi, both right and left. If we then look at the gray matter, we can see that it's organized into horns. So in the back, we have the right and the left posterior horn, or the dorsal horns. Then connecting both sides of that, we find the gray commissure. Here on the right and left, we have the lateral horns. And we also have the anterior horns. Here we find, again, this central bridge that connects both sides of the gray matter. That is the gray commissure. And inside we have the central canal. And the central canal is where you would find cerebrospinal fluid. The last thing I want to point out are the meninges, and we remember that the meninges, the interior and the most visceral is the pia mater. Then you have the arachnoid matter, and then you have the dura mater, the outside.